We only just got the NES Classic last year, and everyone was so upset that it didn't have Maniac Mansion. Yes, everyone, play along with me here, guys. We were all upset that it didn't have Maniac Mansion. It wasn't just me. So what games would we want to see on a possible N64 Mini? Well, the SNES Classic only just got announced, so maybe I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but I grew up, my young adolescent years, my first system I ever bought with my own money was the N64, so I'm excited to possibly get one of those next year. So yes, I'm a little ahead of myself. Yes, this thing dropped the ball not having Maniac Mansion on it, but we're gonna dive right into this video, and remember to be subscribed if you're not already. Now, a couple of things. I already talked about the N64 Mini Classic in my podcast, which I would love for you guys to go and listen to, but I wanted to flesh it out more in a big, larger video. Also, I talked about the SNES Classic and the fact that I think it's gonna be hard to find a SNES Classic. Even though Nintendo said they were gonna make more of them, I still feel like after 2017, you're gonna be hard pressed to pick one up. And I did a lot of research into why Nintendo isn't making enough with both the NES Classic and the SNES Classic. And I've actually found a few good theories online, and I sort of meshed that with my own opinion, and I'd love to talk about that with you guys today. And I actually do believe that it's an intentional choice that Nintendo isn't making enough of these, because they don't really mind whether or not everyone gets their hand on them. It's actually a pretty smart business move that kind of sucks for us as consumers, but makes a lot of sense when you break it down from Nintendo's standpoint. So before I talk about my wish list of games that I would love to see on this thing, I have a list of what I am pretty sure is gonna be the list of games. I mean, you can pretty much hold me to it, I feel. Maybe there'll be a few different, but I have 20 games that I think are definitely gonna be on this thing. I'll be very surprised if they're not, and a few extras that I would love to see on it. But before I get to that, let's talk about this whole why they're not making enough and why I think it's a good business move situation. It comes down to a couple of things. The most basic thing is they have the Nintendo Switch and they want that to do well, especially around holiday season. So yes, putting out these NES Classics and SNES Classics and 64 Classics are awesome for us as consumers, for our families to go out and buy and relive the retro days, but they don't want to take too much sales away from the Switch throughout Christmas time. So limiting the stock and limiting the number per customer is a good way to ensure that there's still going to be people that can't get a hold of these things, and maybe when they go into Best Buy and they said the Best Buy employee, hey, I'd love to pick up a SNES Classic, that's where the Best Buy employer would go, well, we don't have any left, but there is this new Nintendo Switch console which has a bunch of the older games, and if you pay 20 bucks a month, you get access to this entire library of all the SNES games and all the NES games that you could have had on these systems, but you get to take it on the go, you get to put it on your TV at home, play on the big screen just like you would with the NES Classics, and then you get to get the new games as well, the Mario Odysseys, the new Zeldas. So it makes a lot more sense for a consumer at that point. Once you're there, if you want to relive these memories and you have no other option, it's, well, let's pick up the Switch, at least I can buy some new games for that too. It's a smart move. It gets people in the door around Christmas time to either buy the NES Classic or the SNES Classic, or to buy the Switch. And they don't want everyone going in and buying these old systems and not having the money or not having the need or want to buy a Switch. Having that whole emulator service, having the fact that you can buy these old games on the Switch is a selling point for the Switch. It's a way to get people to buy the Switch. So they don't want to take the sales away from that too much. So limiting the stock is a good way to make sure people going out this holiday season will pick up the new system, so the new system will do better and well and sell more, and then we can get more games on it, because ultimately this is the long run. These little retro systems, they're cool, they're nostalgic, but they're not a long run situation for Nintendo. This isn't what's going to keep them in business. It's the Switch. It's the Switch doing better. So then that leads to the point of, well, then why make these at all? Why take any sales away from the Switch? If that's why they're limiting the stock, then why make these things at all? Well, that leads into my next point, which is it is free marketing. And honestly, it's great marketing for a couple of reasons. One, you can look at it and be like, well, Nintendo's just doing this for marketing, just to get their name out there, just to use us, to use nostalgia to their advantage. But honestly, if you think about it from the sense of, let's say Nintendo, they paid to have ads at the Super Bowl. You think about how much money that cost them just to put an ad up, put like a fancy video up with some music, and then people go out and it works. You know, people go out and buy their Switch, buy their product, or any company to go out and pay for advertising that gets flashed in front of your eyes. You see that and you think, oh, I want to buy something from that company. But this is a way of making a product which promotes their entire company and business and markets Nintendo while actually putting something out there, something physical. But then the fact that they're in short supply, that they're in demand, just the fact that there's nostalgia, and all these different points that people like talk about, they make YouTube videos about. I make videos about how there's not enough of them, or that I want one, or that they're being announced, or the media covers the new Nintendo craze over the holiday season. No one can pick up up any of these old retro classic systems. It's on the news, it's on the internet, it's on websites, it's everywhere. Everyone talking about these new systems coming out because it's hot, cool news that people care about because it's Nintendo and nostalgia, and it's marketing. It just gets Nintendo's name out there. It gets people in the door into Best Buy looking for these systems, and if they can't buy one, then they buy a Switch. So it's all marketing. And yeah, it does play on our nostalgia, but at least some of us get to actually buy this really cool thing. I mean, not everyone, but at least that's better than just seeing a trailer, just seeing a commercial, just seeing something for a new Switch game. This is a way of actually getting something out of it while Nintendo promotes themselves. I know that was a little convoluted, and I tried to mesh a bunch of points into one thing to make it sound more intelligible, and I probably should have broke it down into different categories a little better, and I apologize for that. The point of all of that was the NES Classic, the SNES Classic, that's what they're doing with that and did with that. So it stands to reason that it makes sense that with the N64 Classic, if they were to make something like that, that they would do that next year. If they finish the SNES Classic end of this year like they said they would, they do an N64 Classic to drum up more business next year. I mean, it's free advertising. The NES Classic boosted their sales, even their Switch sales last year. The SNES Classic's going to boost their sales and Switch sales this year, and then next year the N64 will do the same thing. And if it works a third time in a row, we get a GameCube Mini Classic, which I can do a video about that maybe eventually, which would be absolutely awesome because again, I'm a huge GameCube fan. But that's why I really feel like the N64 Classic is going to happen for sure, because it's a marketing ploy by Nintendo. They're making as much of these things as they want, they're selling them all, it's great for business. I see no reason why they won't do an N64 Classic. I'll be very surprised if they don't. So you heard it here first, N64 Classic confirmed. It just makes perfect sense to me. So with it being confirmed, what games should I confirm on it right now? Well, let's confirm my list of games that I know for a fact is going to be on this confirmed system, because you heard it here first. I mean, I called the Metroid 4 trailer, so I'm on a roll right now. Okay, so these are the games that I just have to be on the N64 Classic, hands down. Super Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Banjo-Kazooie, Mario Kart 64, Perfect Dark, Conkers Bad Fur Day, Donkey Kong 64, Star Fox 64, Jet Force Gemini, Pokemon Stadium, Pokemon Snap, F-Zero X, Paper Mario, Wave Race 64, Yoshi's Story, Harvest Moon 64, Mario Party, and Bomberman 64. That is my list of games that I think are absolutely going to be on it, and my friend Sean Long's pretty much convinced me that Snowboarding 1080 will be on it, which I thought about putting it on the list, but I wanted to keep it at a concise 20 that I know for a fact would be on it. I missed Smash Brothers. The game is literally in the background of this graphic, and I just noticed it and realized I completely forgot about Smash Brothers. Literally my second favorite Nintendo 64 game of all time, and probably the game that I played the most as a kid apart from Ocarina of Time, and I didn't put it on the list. That's crazy. Harvest Moon, Super Smash Brothers. I don't know how that's not on the list. But let's say there's gonna be 25. And if there's going to be 25, at that point there's definitely going to be the 1080s. You're going to have Diddy Kong Racing, which again could be in the main list. You could interchange a few of these. I think Banjo-Tooie may be at the point where you're doing 25, throw the sequel on there as well. Star Wars Pod Racer, because I absolutely love that game. Snowboard Kids, and then maybe a wrestling game of some kind. Wrestling games on the 64 was definitely, that was a staple of the 64. I'm not sure how they would go about the licensing on something like that, or which one they would even pick, because there was so many. That would be really cool to have a wrestling game on there, obviously, and have the 4 controller points on this little 64 mini with 4 of your friends sitting around with the controllers. And hey, the controllers, I'm curious to see what they do in the controllers, because I was thinking, if they do it like this, like the old school size, because the NES and the SNES Classic had the original size controllers, which made sense because they were so small already. But if you have something like this, it's going to end up being bigger than the actual system, or at least the same size. The N64 Classic would probably be about that size and shape, actually. It's very similar to that. So you'd have a controller about the same size, which would be fine. But if you wanted to scale it back and make something a little bit more realistic for a controller, let's say, a little less awkward to play, Hori has a really nice controller, this little Hori controller, whatever it's called, and this would be a really cool little addition. But for a retro feel and throwback feel, I think they're definitely going to go with something like, I guess I would just have to redo the same controller, right? It just feels really big and bulky, but I mean, that's what it was. What can you do about it? I'm pretty sure everyone knows this by now, but y'all realize that this is the nunchuck from the Wii right here? This little like this one stem that you hold like this. If you did like a cutout here of a little circle, you are holding the nunchuck. I always thought that was really cool. I'm sure everyone knows that by now, but I still think that's really cool. So that in a nutshell is why I feel like there is gonna be an N64 Mini next year. These are the games that I'm almost certain are gonna be on this list. The N64 had a kind of a small library of about, I think it was about 180 to 200 games, and these are 20 of the absolute best games. I really hope Jet Force Gemini makes a list because it's a really underrated game. I could go either way with a couple of things. Like, I think Harvest Moon 64 really spices up this list, but I wouldn't be surprised if they left something like that off. Maybe Wave Race 64, I feel like that definitely there. If not that, then maybe 1080 snowboarding. I don't see anything else I could really add to this list unless they're going to make it 30 games, and then you could put Pokemon Stadium 2 on there. There's a few other games you could throw on if you manage to get the licenses for them, but that would be a really nice solid list, and you definitely need, I feel definitely need all of the top 20 that I had there. And I think the quality of these games and the length of these games and how much more it would cost to make this system, because you do have a bigger controller and it is a 4-player system, so you wouldn't want to be buying 3 extra controllers, so I would assume this one would ship with 2 controllers as well, which is gonna start being a pretty big box when you think about trying to fit those 2 controllers in there. So I think we're probably gonna be looking at $80 again. I hope it doesn't go up to 90. It's definitely not gonna be 60 like the NES, so you're gonna be looking at about 80. Again, all of this is my speculation, but I mean, I've been following Nintendo and the trends, and I do all these videos and I learn so much, and then all of you guys leave in the comment section below your opinions, which I then add to my opinions and formulate everything in my mind, and I feel like I don't know, I feel like I'm right about this, but what do you guys think? Let me know down below about this entire video. Do you think there's going to be an N64 Classic? What games would you love to see on the N64 Classic if they do make one? Did I miss any, or do you like the list that I have? And finally, how do you feel about my theory of Nintendo doing limited supplies as a marketing ploy to get people in the stores, or just talking about Nintendo in general to drum up business for the entire brand, and then end up picking up a Switch, playing their games on that, and then improving the Switch's sales? I know that's a lot to take in one video and a lot to leave a comment about below. You can leave a comment about all of those things or one of those things, but I would love to hear your opinion on this. I'm really excited for this prospect, and it's more exciting because if I am right, then I don't see any reason why there wouldn't be a GameCube Classic, and honestly, I just want a tiny little GameCube that I can hold in my hand and play old school GameCube games with that awesome controller, one of the best controllers ever made, some Eternal Darkness, some Mario Sunshine, some Double Dash. Remember to like this video, leave that comment down below, subscribe if you haven't already. I'd love to see you in the next one. Check out my podcast, check out my Patreon, check out everything in the links below. For the love of video games, retro gaming, and Maniac Mansion, I'll see y'all in the next video. I'd love to throw this at the camera to do a nice little like closeout, but I don't want to knock the camera over, so I'm just gonna do this. Bye.